All right, so calling the meeting to order, 9:31. My name is Brendan McDowell. I'm with the Manchester Planning Department. If we could do a quick introduction, starting over there in that corner.
Hi, good morning. Angelique Pandolf from Easter Seals.
Andrew Haddock from the town of Chester.
Sam Fazioli, Manchester DPW.
Linda Cligot, Francistown.
Tracy Whitehead, MTA CART.
Zach Swick with the commission.
Bush Laker, Manchester Planning.
Anthony Summers with the commission.
David Tilton with the commission.
George Harris, Calgary Planning. Dave Miller with the commission.
Adam Lasner with the commission.
And Sylvia Von Allock, the commission.
Great.
And there's James Veo with the commission.
There he is. All right. So I'm sorry, do we have a quorum? Was that?
Yeah, we have a quorum and we probably want to go to introduce our,
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Let's introduce everybody from. All right, so I'm starting from the top.
it's Mark Sunan.
Mark Sunan, start with you.
So Mark Sunan, Town of New Boston.
Vincent
Gano.
Gano,
Yeah, Vincent Pagano, Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission.
and Tammy.
Tammy Zamoyski with the commission.
I see Kristen Clark there,
Hi, Kristen Clark City, Manchester, DPW.
and Lucia.
Hi, I'm having a little trouble. I'm not sure if everyone can hear me. Please be alive from the town of Bedford.
We can barely hear you, Lucia, but we
Yeah, I'm
did
having
hear.
such trouble.
Interesting. All right. And we have a new face, Grant.
Grant, yeah, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, yep, I'm Grant McGregor. I'm the new town planner in Hooksett. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late to this.
That's all right. Yeah, welcome. Great. I think that's everybody. So the minutes from, I think we're voting on to approve the minutes from last July 18th.
Second.
A second. All right. So all in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
All right. Any opposed? All right. Sounds like it
Uh,
passes.
Mark Sunan abstaining.
Abstaining. Okay. All right. I think it passes. So should we move to new business? We've got a informational session. Overview and discussion of SS4A Comprehensive Safety Action Plan.
We do.
Is there anything?
If it would be possible, maybe James can go first on the MTP. I'm gonna check and see where our guests from.
Oh,
AHP
okay.
are.
Perfect. Yeah, we can move James up. We can do that. Yeah, floor is yours.
I don't have a very long presentation here. It's really just to let people know what we're up to. What I'm gonna do is pull up a one pager, which was not in the packet, but handed out with the sent out with the reminder. All right. Look at that. And I think we can share this on Zoom, right?
That's why not.
All right, not critical that people be able to see this, but if somebody could just confirm they can see this on the screen for those that are on.
Can see
Zoom.
it.
Great. So, as mentioned, James Veo, Principal Planner with Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. I am back after a 2-year hiatus working the private market. Sylvia called me up, said they had this exciting project to work on, both the regional comprehensive plan and what we have before us right here, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. And so the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission's long-range transportation plan. As a metropolitan planning organization, which is the status of Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, the MTP is a core responsibility of the MPO. And so we need to periodically, every 4 years, update this plan to make sure we're keeping current with the long range vision for our transportation network. So what is a metropolitan transportation plan? Well, as I just noted, it's a long-term plan. It's really a strategic framework that defines vision, goals, and investment strategies for the development of the region's system, transportation system. This is really important to our region because without it, we wouldn't have consensus around how to make investments in the network to support economic vitality and quality of life. Probably most importantly, we would not qualify to receive federal funding for transportation projects. But also it's in a very pragmatic way, it's very important for promoting coordination amongst both local government and state and federal government. So it's an important tool for that. Some key components of the MTP that we will be updating is a vision. So it's setting goals and objectives. We will reaffirm where we are. Thank you, Sylvia, if you can. We'll be doing a needs assessment, basically modeling future traffic and determining where there may be needs for improvement to the system. Prioritization and selection of projects, which you guys are all familiar with because Nate does such a nice job talking about the TIP, the 10-year plan. And while this document really will include all of that work, plus it will look further out. So the Metropolitan Transportation Plan looks 20+ years into the horizon. The plan also takes in is a key period for public involvement. So we'll be doing a survey as part of this update to the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That's not something we did the last time we updated this. The plan also takes into account environmental considerations. You know, basically, how does transportation system impact society and the environment? And then finally, performance measures. As you've probably heard from Zach before, we on a regular basis check to see the progress of the transportation network against many different factors. You may have seen Zach talking about things like traffic safety, traffic and fatalities and serious injury reports, things like congestion or travel time delay. All those are measures that we track to make sure that the system is operating as efficiently as possible. All this work to update the plan for the 2025 to 2050 horizon will need to be completed by December of 2025. And we anticipate that it will take, you know, a good amount of that time, so I'd say somewhere around October 2025 to get all this work done. And so in the coming, by the time this TAC meets again, we may already have a webpage up, and we're putting together the resources to solicit input for a survey that will come maybe by the end of this year. We'll be, as I mentioned, the survey. We'll be putting together an informational webpage by the end of September. And what we're currently doing right now is we're conducting stakeholder interviews. So here we go. We are, I am reaching out to town administrators, town managers, planning directors, directors of public works, to ask for their input on key elements of the MTP update. So this would be, you know, what are the trends you're seeing in the transportation network over the last 4 years? What are some of the anticipated shifts? You know, we're calling them external forces, but what are the changes we're seeing to society that we should adapt to in the future? Also, you know, what strategies should we use in your local community to engage the public in this update process? So we've already received some really good feedback, and it is my goal to get to every single member community within the region as part of this interview process. As we wrap this up, I just note the next thing that's underway right now is a desk review of every single master plan for each community in the region, as well as core planning documents from New Hampshire DOT. And so we go through and we'll review the recommendations and actions from all these documents and aggregate them to determine what themes we're seeing across small municipalities, large municipalities, City of Manchester, and see, and use those themes to help direct the work, that we do updating the MTP. So, that is my quick overview of the MTP. I don't know if anybody has any questions. If not, I, pass along to our main presenter here. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thanks, James. All right, do we have our main presenter? Are they present?
Yes.
Perfect. All right, floor is yours.
Well, just by way of background for everyone, we'll be talking today in detail about the Safe Streets and Roads for All program, which is a newly established program under the last federal transportation bill, which is known as the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. It established this program as a new program focused on the safety of all transportation users. This program has a lot of potential benefits for the region and for the state as well, and nationwide. We are embarking on an action plan under the SS4A. It's called the SS4A for short, Safe Streets for All program. We are partnering with our colleagues at the other 3 MPOs in New Hampshire. So this is a joint effort between ourselves, the Nashua region, the Rockingham region, and the Stratford region. We all pooled funds together and applied for SS4A funding to develop action plans. And through that process, we have hired BHB as our consultants. BHB is working essentially for all 4 MPOs in this process. The product of this effort will be action plans specific to each of the MPO regions. So Nashua will have an action plan. We will have an action plan. Rockingham and Stratford will each have their own action plan. So with that as background, BHB, our colleagues, have been doing great work on this project. Today, we're joined by Frank Kachalka and Greg Backos from BHB, who will be giving us an overview of the work completed to date and what the next steps are of the action plan.
All set?
All right.
And we just want to check, I'm sorry, Frank, can our home viewers see this presentation in full
Yes,
view?
we can. Looks good.
Perfect. If you don't mind, I'll stand. It's a little easier for me to see everyone. So yeah, Nate, I think you hit on most of the first 2 slides, so this is great. Yeah, so really, we're here for the, talk about, there we go. So today, really, it's an overview of what the safety action plan we're doing. What's the work that we've completed, kind of give you some information. It's probably new to most of you. We did have a survey. I think most of you helped get that word out. Some of the results, really, we're really digging into it right now, but the bigger picture is really the safety discussion. We had the project survey. We know the crash data, but really want to hear from the communities and those outside of our expertise, really what's out there, what keeps you up at night, what's your safety concern. So as you can see, the 4 MPOs, 72 communities, so it's not a small undertaking to go through all this. There we go. So as Nate mentioned, we're doing an action plan for each of 4 MPOs. So the majority of the initial setup is probably going to be consistent. We're going to have an overview. We're going to have what the SS4A is. But then as the action plan dives into the details, into the crash analysis, into the plan, that's where they differ. So the look will probably be very similar. But as we get into the details, that's where you're going to find the difference between everything. It's going to work on the safe systems approach. Before it was, let's get rid of accidents. They've changed that. Federal highway really is, accidents are going to happen. They're called accidents, crashes. How do we make them safer? So now we have safer roads, safer speeds, that type of mentality. And also the action plans are going to work with the strategic highway safety plan. So that was developed back in 2021. BHB was a part of that. We have emphasis areas. So distracted driving, right off the roads, speeding. The plan's going to work in conjunction. So it's not separate. The idea is really pull everything together and make it a cohesive plan. And the plan, the intent is bring we did the plan, it goes up on the shelf, we're done. The next stage, if you want more grant funding through this, is demonstration grants, implementation grants. That, when this plan is done, any of the communities underneath the MPO and the MPO can actually go for this grant money for actual projects or demonstration or supplemental. If you want to add on to this plan from a community and say, we want to take a deeper dive into Manchester or another community, you can try to go for additional grant funding. The 5-year program, $5 billion is in there. We're in year 3. End of this month is the end of year 2. End of year 3 for applications. And then it starts year 4, I think will probably be April again, I think was the last one. So it keeps moving. We do have an election coming up. That may change things and timing, but we'll keep it as is. The other thing is with the steering committee, we have representation from all 4 of the MPOs. We also have the Department of Safety, DOT involved to guide us and try to get these plans going. So really work to date, we've been meeting monthly with the steering committees, committee to go through kind of what we need to do, kind of the background, guide us where we need to go. This map here is Southern New Hampshire, just crash severity, just things that we just kind of looked at. We're not going to get into it, but you can kind of see we're looking at the whole thing. You know, there's a lot in Manchester, Londonderry, they're big communities. We're not going to focus there. We're focusing on all the communities. This is a comprehensive plan. So we'll get into that more after. Public survey, we had over 1,000 participants. So thank you very much for getting the word out. That was great. Most of the people left 3 comments, some made 4. So we have a lot of information we're diving into. 259, if we take their IP address from their computer, we don't ask for the names, but just where their computer was, basically almost a quarter was from Southern New Hampshire. So it's a good breakdown of that. Like I said, when we're looking at the analysis of the crashes, we got that from the Hampshire DOT, kind of diving into any trends, any things like that we can see. And then later this month, probably more in September, we're going to do online focus groups. So we're going to reach out to specific people, motorcyclists, as we're finding in the news, accidents or the crashes are pretty prevalent June, July, and August for this. So we want to reach them, maybe some schools. We definitely have to do this as an equity plan. So we're going to be reaching out for those in the lower, the unserved communities. We need to really get them to be involved, or how will this plan help them? Crosswalks, making sure transit stops, are they in the right spot? Can people get to them? That type of stuff. And then we're gonna have some public workshops. So I'm gonna ask another favor. We're gonna do some Zoom or Teams calls to ask the public to join us. Besides the survey, we want to hear from them. We'll probably have another outreach that, can you guys get that information out? We're gonna try to have 4, like a morning, we're gonna do lunchtime and evenings, so that everybody has a chance to somehow try to connect. Most of the people probably doing the survey may join the workshops, but we want to have that diverse group. So like I said, public survey, these are all the pins just from a motor vehicle improvement standpoint. The white ones are ones that people didn't leave a message on or a note. But you can see there's a good dispersed group in the area. Just some takeaways, as expected. 96% of the people say they drive themselves. We asked if they carpooled and such, but a lot of people just drive themselves. So 33% walk or 17% bike to where they have to go for daily travel errands. I think the traffic safety, I think, is a little eye opener. If you drive yourself, 65% feels mostly or very safe. But walking, if you look, about 2/3 are somewhat safe, unsafe, or fairly safe. So, they're not as comfortable as you would like them out there. That could be maybe sidewalks, maybe they feel the sidewalks aren't great. They're nervous about crossings, people speeding, that type of stuff. We're going to dive into that information. And then for bicyclists, 37% put NA, so they're not bicycling, but of the remaining, almost half are safe or unsafe. I think we expected something like that, you know, a lot of bicyclists, we're finding that we don't have the facilities, so this is just re-emphasizing what we're going through. And then also, what can we do to improve it? And that's where we're gonna come in at the end of this presentation to ask. Top concerns with driver behavior. Distracted driving, speeding, aggressive driving. I don't think there's no surprises, just huge numbers there, you know, 2/3, three quarters, 80%. So just things that we're finding real quick from the survey. Just gonna touch on a couple of these maps here and to kind of add to the discussion we're gonna have, or what I'm gonna ask of you. So if we look at pedestrian crashes that we got, you know, majority are in Manchester, but we have a couple outlining ones. On the map, the red triangles are fatalities. The orange squares are severe injury, and then the crosses are just minor injury. I say just minor injury. 5-10 miles an hour faster, those could be fatalities or, you know, serious injury. So we want to make sure we see where all these are. But as expected, mostly the city, but you have some outlining areas. Similar to bicyclist crashes, you have a majority in Manchester, just because of the size, but we do have some outlining ones in the other regions. Motorcycle crashes, this number was higher than I expected, but you can see severity a lot higher, fatal and serious, a lot more. You don't have as many crosses, you have a lot more serious. Come to expect with motorcycles, you don't have anything buffering you. So we just kind of seeing where that is along the roadway. Speeding, a lot of fatalities, you know, you're going over the speed limit, you're hitting it, probably either going off the road or hitting an object. So you can kind of see there's a blanket around in different communities as well. Distracted driving, a lot of minor injuries that you see in there, probably on their phones, rear ending, side swipes, that type of stuff. But you can see the prevalence of how it affects every community there. I think we know that. I think we've heard about it. We've seen it in the news. So just how we deal with that. Roadway departures. Kind of spread out. You would think, of course, you know, on your rural communities, rural roads, probably more applicable to have your departures. You know, it's a dark road. Maybe somebody's unfamiliar, or maybe you're used to it and you're just going over the speed limit. So one thing that we're looking at is the roadway departures may include speeding as well. It's not just one or the other. So when we look at what we call emphasis areas, there may be speeding, distracted driving, and roadway departures all in one accident. So just as there's a table I didn't put in here because it's confusing, but there's a table, it's kind of a matrix. Says if you have a speeding accident, how do the other emphasis areas that call in? And we're going to look at that. That was in the highway strategic highway safety plan. So really, why we're here, really want your input. Kind of showed some of the background of what we're going into. But I think the two questions, and Nate, I think these are great questions, is, you know, what are the most significant transportation safety risks and concerns facing in the community? What's keeping you up at night? What do you hear from your people? You know, when you're at a meeting, people come up to you and talk to you. I'm sure safety is one of the biggest ones. People like talking about safety or feeling unsafe. And then the other one is kind of what strategies or projects would you benefit to address safety risks? Now, we can get into specific locations, but I think, you know, if we talk more of as a whole first and see where that goes. You know, we don't have enough crosswalks. We don't have enough lighting at crosswalks. You know, other things. Maintenance. I don't want to put out maintenance, but you only have so much funding. It would be great to stripe the road twice a year. Maybe that's not feasible. You know, that type of stuff. You know, the pavement markings. So really, this is where we're going to get into it for the next, I don't know, 45 minutes, but more of a discussion. So we can look back. We're going to do this with each of the MPOs. Now, these questions are going to be related to you, but we want to see how it all lays out together. But we're also going to ask those focus groups and those online, when we have those meetings, we're going to be asking the same things. You know, similar to what we kind of did in the survey, to kind of make sure we have a complete package, holistic approach, make sure we're not missing anything. Sometimes there's outliners that people don't think about, but I think with that, I don't know everybody here. So I don't know if we want to just go around the table or how you want to. I should have asked you before.
So most of the people here, we did do introductions earlier, we could do it
Sorry.
real quick, but most of the people here and online are municipal, wear municipal hats.
Yeah.
Some are staff, some serve on boards, some are volunteers in their communities, but most of the people here at the TAC wear the hat of a municipality. So whereas the public survey, was far reaching and got a lot of impact, feedback from members of the general public. This is a bit of a different audience in that you're municipal stakeholders. And so we wanted to make sure that you all had an opportunity to be able to share and guide the development of this plan from your perspective as a municipality and thinking about these questions from that lens. So maybe for Frank and Greg's benefit, before we dive into the discussion, we could just briefly go around real quick so they know who's in the room. Adam.
Yeah, good start.
Yeah.
Adam with the planning commission.
Dave Miller with the plan.
Joe Cirrus, planning director, Jerry, I know Frank.
Yeah.
David Hill with the planning commission. Anthony Summers, planning commission. Butch Lakewood, Manchester planning. Rick Mappus, VHB. Zach Swick with the commission. James Mayo.
Linda Clunard, volunteer for Francistown, and formerly of the planning board. We're a small community, so word gets around. All you gotta do is tell one person.
That's
Sam Bazio in Manchester, DPW.
Andrew Haddock, town planner for Chester. We do have a lot of residents that are concerned about traffic issues, traffic speed. And I did have just one question for you on the data set. We had a fatality last year and it seemed like on a lot of those slides, Chester was totally sparse. So I don't know if there's a disconnect between our town reporting, our police department reporting and whatever, but I was looking for, known problems and locations, and Chester's data just seemed very sparse on those slides. So there will be a conversation for a later date.
I'll get back to that one.
Angelique Panel, Easter Seals.
Excellent.
Tracy Whitehead, Manchester Transit.
Brendan McDowell, Manchester Planning.
And Sylvia Von Alec, I'm the executive director here.
We do have some folks online.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, can't see.
Hold on.
I will hold tight.
Let me fix that.
Right. So it's Mark, I think, right? Sunan?
Sure. Frank and Greg, I'm Mark Sunan, representing the town of New Boston.
All right, Tammy.
Tammy Zamoyski with the commission.
And Grant.
Grant McGregor with the town of Hooksett.
And let's see, Vincent.
Vincent stepped away. Oh, no, he's there.
I just stepped away, so I missed that. Just looking for an intro or?
Oh yeah, we're just reintroducing ourselves again.
Oh, sure, no problem. Vincent Pagano, I work at Central New Hampshire Regional Planning Commission, so neighbors to just barely to the north.
All right, and Kristen Clark.
Sorry, just trying to unmute. Kristen Clark, Manchester DPW.
All right, finally we have Lucia,
Let's try this again. I'm sorry.
resident. All right.
Yeah,
Perfect.
from the town of Bedford.
Town of Bedford. Awesome. Welcome.
Awesome. Excellent. No, this is a good picture. To answer your question, so the crash data that we're looking at is from 2018 to 2022. We don't have the 23 data yet. So, and for fatalities, what we found, and I'm sure others have probably experienced it, we use FARS data from the federal highway because New Hampshire's data is not as accurate, we're finding. So the FARS data is a little bit more accurate for what we see. We found that on a couple of occasions.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. So with that, I think I'm gonna go around, start here, Londonderry.
Oh,
Derry.
yeah, no problem, Frank.
And just kind of, we can talk the first question right now and just like what you're hearing, what you know.
Yeah, I mean, in Derry's case, Frank, we have two big installs, a big project, it's exit 4A that everybody's aware of.
Yeah.
The intent, one of the goals of that exit is to release some of the traffic congestion on Route 102 in Derry. Being that that's an east-west road, so several people, you can go from Nashua to get to the beach in the summertime, they literally go Route 102 to Chester to Raymond and get on 101, so we get that during the summer months. As Andrew can relate to, there's a lot of growth happening in smaller towns to the east of Derry, Chester, Sandown. They're coming through Derry to get to those smaller towns. So big picture, you know, we're hoping that 4A will help with some of that downtown congestion. The smaller, but what we hear mostly from the public, like at meetings and stuff, is Derry has a lot of like smaller towns. We have old roads that go back 100 years. They predate any development. So now you have all these housing developments on these back roads, literally from downtown. And people are using them as shortcuts to get to other roads. And the speeding on those back roads, I don't know what the solution is. You can put signs up, but people get creative and they find ways, and they're speeding down the roads, and you have school buses, and so it might tie into some of what the day-to-day stuff we hear from folks in the town. Yeah, that back road issue stuff.
Okay, and Pinkerton Academy's downtown.
Yes.
So kind of in that area, other schools, anything, crosswalk or pedestrian sidewalks?
There is a plan, for people that know Pinkerton, if you go to the Rotary, the traffic circle in Derry, it's the largest high school and one of them in the country, so it's a regional high school, and the cars and the buses Monday through Friday. But I think, Pinkerton's doing a great job. They put more crosswalks with the flashing yellows, which is helpful. But the long-term goal is they're gonna build like
Like an overpass?
An overpass from the high school main campus to the parking lot where the football field is. Because most of the kids that have cars and the staff have to park across the street. So that'll be a good safety improvement by having that overpass there.
Okay.
So.
No, that's good. And yeah, and we know for a, kind of alleviate some of the.
That's our
congestion. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think as we go through it, as we're coming along, if something comes back up in mind, we can come back to it, like, or somebody has something and they say, yeah, talking about RFBs, you know, the rapid flashing beacons and stuff, and if somebody else has a comment, you know, it's a pretty free flow.
The one last thing now, you remember thinking, I'll stop it. On Broadway itself, if you drive through, you know, Frank, you've been doing some projects in Derry, so you're sure, but those beacons now, we have 3 in the downtown on the main street. So we have those crosswalks, they have the flashing beacons, and they've been very successful. That at least goes down some of that traffic.
Okay, no, that's good. It's good help.
I'm not a municipal representative, but since the town of Auburn is not here today, I will mention something on their behalf, because they have, through our 10-year plan solicitation process, raised a kind of piggybacking on what George said, raised a project, a potential project for the Rockingham Rail Trail crossing on Route 121 in the town of Auburn, which is kind of a mid-block skewed, you know, it's a tricky location for a variety of reasons, and I having some conversations about whether or not that should be scoped for 10-year plan purposes, or whether or not it's an RRFB type of improvement that might not rise up to, you know, being a large enough scale for the 10-year plan. But kind of on that thought, given Auburn's, you know, concern about that location, it makes me think that mid-block rail trail crossings in general are probably, you know, have similar concerns throughout our region and beyond. And so I would think that we want to reflect that somehow in the plan, that, you know, mid-block rail trail crossings on rural roads in particular, but beyond rural roads, mid-block rail trail crossings in general, you know, having appropriate crossing treatment, safe crossing treatment for those locations, given that we are seeing the rail trail infrastructure is popular. It's great. I'm a rail trail user myself. And so the more, and we want people to use that infrastructure, but we want them to be able to cross these locations safely. So since Auburn's not here today, I thought I would temporarily put an Auburn hat on and
Nate.
you know, bring that up on their behalf. Yeah.
To add to that, Nate, in Manchester too, we talked to Auburn about their location, and we have similar concerns of crossing 28 right near Lake Massabesic. There's not even a striped crosswalk for the Rockingham Rail Trail. So that was one on our list as well.
Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah, in general, Manchester's rail trail network is really expanding in all directions, and some of those crossings are through some very heavily trafficked streets. And like the Raise Grant project across the South Willow, and we have it in our plans right now, but as those volumes pick up, we may need to improve that crossing. It may need to eventually get to the point where it might need to be a bridge. So something like that should be kind of considered.
Because the rail trail crossings are unique because in the city with heavy traffic, you gotta worry about, you know, finding the gap.
Yeah.
Are you able to get through? You feel safe, but then as you get outside the city, traffic's not as high. So the frequency, and then you got speeding because not many people on the road and such. So
It's tricky. In the downtown area, you don't want, you have to design so you don't upset the flow of traffic, back up traffic for this trail crossing, which could have a lot of crossings. You have to find some kind of balance there. And then, yeah, in those more rural areas, when you're on a trail, you feel very safe. Sometimes you can have people cross the road regardless of whether it's a stop or not. They're not gonna look for cars. Cars aren't gonna notice them.
Yeah.
That's a huge risk for accidents, so.
And I think as we're talking about the RFBs, you know, the crossings, I think lighting plays a part, so we can, you know, think about lighting and other things as well and how we're working. And that's just not crossings, it's crosswalks, it's roadways and stuff, it's whatever we find as safety elements. And we're looking at it from a whole standpoint, so.
And just additional warnings for motorists that hey, there is a key crossing here, there's a rail trail crossing here, advance notice, so that way to let them know that they should start preparing for that.
I guess with that, with signage, I guess from all communities. Is it tough to get signage out there? Like, do you have enough signage where you want things? From that standpoint, I know sometimes from a maintenance or just funding, like to have more notice for people. But sometimes the conditions start to deteriorate on the signs, you just can't get back out there. It's a cost. I mean, Manchester's unique, you know, but the smaller communities, is it similar where are we providing enough information for the road users that they know what's coming up? There's a stop sign coming, there's, you know, that type of stuff, so that they're not surprised, especially if you have unfamiliar people, familiarity with your community, I guess.
Town's worst place is the crossing up five-way intersection on the top of the hill designed for the horse and buggy days. And there's not enough room, there's not enough sightline distance to get a crosswalk. So the argument in town is always, we need to have a crosswalk. So because where everybody has the concerts, you know, the meeting place that everybody goes to is across the street where everybody parks. And the problem is the roadway, the state highway 47 or 130, I get mixed up. I live there, I get mixed up with 47 or 130. But the road coming up from New Boston is narrow because of the plant, you know, it's wide and then it narrows just as you get to that uphill. So you're screaming along at 45 and 30 miles an hour. So, and you're coming up the hill and now there's no place to put signs. Like there is no place. You got a house right here. You got the ledge here with the house right up against the ledge, and then your tunnel vision. And that's right at the top of the crest, but you can't see the people. It's where everybody crosses. So I was thinking about the bridge too, but we have like hardly any people. How can a smaller community afford to get something safe that meets the DOT needs to be within the, you know, parameters? We're not allowed to have a crosswalk because it wouldn't be legal by safety standards, but the people need to cross safely. And I don't know, we haven't figured out how to address. If you could figure out how to address that question, it would be awesome. So, you know, really the only way we think to do it would be to blow off the street and bring it down level, and that's historic value. It would be.
I was pretty impressed with what they did in downtown Derry. They have some crosswalks there. And when somebody wants to use that crosswalk, you really have to be out of it not to, you know, they push the button and they're pretty good flashing lights and signage. And you really know when that crosswalk is used, but it used to be, you never knew, you know, when you went through downtown Derry, you just had to be on very, very high guard. And so maybe, you know, an on the ground solution without a bridge might be like what they have in Derry with, they have signage, but then they have those small LEDs on them. Somebody pushes that, you know that crosswalk is in use.
It could be the part where the sign would go, won't be can't fit, like it's that, I don't know how to, it hasn't been solved.
Maybe it could be moved a little further away from the intersection as sort of a, you know, crosswalk in use. You know,
Yeah.
Just ahead of the arrows. Then when somebody pushes the button, that sign that says warning crosswalk ahead in use.
Yeah. Andrew, I'm embarrassed to say this, but you remember, I should know this, the wording on the sign, it's something like, you push the button, like Andrew said, the yellow beacon goes on, but it says something like stop, wave or something, and there's some, when I go back, I'm gonna look, I'll let you know, Frank, but it's got very specific wording on that sign, in addition to the yellow, push the button, the yellow beacon goes on.
Yeah.
So when you cross the sidewalk, the joke is you kind of wave to people, but it works.
Yeah.
As Andrew said, it slows down a lot.
And that's one of the federal countermeasures, you know, rapid flashing beacons have really been on the increase of use because of the flashing to give the advance notice. And with the proper signing ahead, I live in Nashua near Riviera College, you come around a bend. And when somebody hits the button, you actually can't see it, but they have a sign in advance that when the button gets hit, there's another flashing that people are in the crosswalk. So there's other ways, but when we look at this from our plan standpoint, we're gonna come up with countermeasures or options that provide safety. If you're in rural communities, if you're here are some countermeasures that we're gonna look at. And those are one of the ones that definitely work, is what we're finding. It definitely increases the visibility as such. We know that you can't ask law enforcement to be everywhere. You know, in the past, it was, let's get the police out there and do enforcement. Well, now they have to be everywhere. So we can't rely on that. We can't, another piece to the plan, just, we'll keep going around, but there's education, there's enforcement. So if there's a program that to reach out to the community, if you have new roundabouts and it's brand new to your community, what we say for education is how to drive them, you know, that type of stuff to keep that safety aspect. So there's some other education in there that could be part of the plan. You know, it's not just projects, but there's some other pieces as well. Just, and we can kind of get to that later, but
Hey,
Right.
Frank, can I just piggyback on that real quick on education?
sure.
You know, I think a lot of people, there are new traffic control devices that are being deployed around New Hampshire that frankly, I'm not sure people always know how to use or what they mean. Even the flashing left arrow for a permissive left turn, I'm not sure there's wide understanding of what that is or what that means. The pedestrian hybrid beacon, which is kind of the next step up from the RRFB, has many different phases that mean different things. And I do this for a living. And flashing red on a pedestrian hybrid beacon means proceed with caution. Flashing red does not mean proceed with caution in any other traffic control device in the United States of America. So that is, you know, I think people don't fully understand what some of these new devices are, how they work, what they mean, and I think there's some education there especially for people who've been driving 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that, you know, there's not driver's ed again when you're in your, you know, 40s or 50s or 60s or whatever the case may be. But these new traffic control devices are being deployed. But yeah, I think there needs to be kind of a continuing education process about what these things are and how they work.
Kristen, you had something?
Want flashing lights on my signs.
If I could, as we wait for Kristen, I think that's just that she spoke last. But I'm going to put on my Londonderry hat and also my age-friendly hat and talk about making roads age-friendly. And when I talk about that, I mean doesn't matter how old you are, that you understand where you can drive or where you can walk on the road. And I recall a conversation with a committee that was a group of seniors, and a gentleman said to me, you know, I'm really terrified to drive often because I don't know where there's no fog line. He didn't use the word fog line or phrase, but that's what he was talking about. There's no identification of the road and where I'm supposed to drive. And he was very concerned about driving at night and not knowing where that fog line was and where he can have his car. So we know a lot of communities want that rural look to a road, and sometimes they want no line. Sometimes it's okay to have a center line, but often they don't want that fog line. And I think that really changes as you age, and whether it's reflectors or a painted fog line, that would help, I think, all users, whether you're walking on that road or driving on that road, especially if it's at night and there's some sort of reflector. But that would help keep people in their lane, so to speak. And then you've asked what keeps me up at night, and I will say aggressive drivers. And until because my car, I feel like often has a target on its little tiny back. And I've had multiple occasions driving home, and it's usually between Manchester and Auburn on 101. And I've had seriously aggressive truck drivers chase me down, and it's frightening. And that's what keeps me up at night.
Yeah.
And until we have an allowance for videos, because cops aren't everywhere and no one's there to see it except me. Screaming in my car, what's happening? Because a truck has literally wanted to run me off the road, and it's terrifying. Anyway, so videos, yeah.
I like that. It's true. I mean, what keeps me up at night, I have two, a 20 and a 22-year-old daughters, and when they were learning to drive, having the faith, knowing what I know, and having the faith to have them go out and drive and deal with people and making sure they know the rules of the road. And that keeps me up. Even now, still, I don't.
Aggressive drivers, it's scary.
Young drivers, like, are they educated enough?
Mhm.
I think that's the other thing is, you know, we have the older drivers that are used to a certain, and when things are a little bit different, like we start introducing safety measures and other items, are we instructing everybody how to use them? And that goes down to the younger drivers too. Sometimes I think they're going out there too soon. That's personally, I think they're gonna give them a license and they can start driving, because I've seen the high schools, and when they leave the high school, and I don't want to be anywhere near that when they're leaving. So,
Right.
but anyway, yeah, no, that's a good point.
MTA, yes. So I'm working on a project right now with replacing every single bus stop sign in the city of Manchester on our fixed route system. So they probably were originally put up back in 1973, haven't been replaced ever since. So I'm doing like a rip and replace. So we're having our old signs wrapped. So we go out and we take the old signs down and replace with our new bus stop sign with our new logo, new look. It's quite a project. I mean, I'm talking like probably 500 signs at this point. And placement of the signs, you know, you have 30 feet transit vehicles having to pull over to pick people up on the sidewalk. And where to put the sign, make sure it's safe, like crosswalks we were talking about. Just getting it, I don't know, lit up. I'm not sure, like what else to. It's challenging. Yeah.
You're just within the city. Do you go outside the city at all?
Slightly, yes. Yes, I have stops in Salem, Nashua, Salem, Tuscan Village. Nashua is at Nashua Transit.
Yeah.
Concord is at the terminal. Exit 14, Stickney Ave Terminal. Exit 5, Londonderry, but Salem is the only one that's what?
No, my question is, the people that are using it, either don't have access to a car or don't want to drive.
Correct.
Can they get to these bus stops easily? Do they have to cross roads? Like, do you hear any of that saying, you know, and I'm talking winter too, like maintenance.
Yeah.
I don't mean to hop on maintenance, but they have a tough job trying to clear the roads and then try to
They
fix
do.
sidewalks. I envy that. But at the same time, people that don't have vehicles, they're relying on it.
Yeah.
Don't want them in the road.
Yeah.
As such. So I'm just curious. what you hear.
It's challenging, like every route, I'm doing it by route. So I start with, like the airport route. So I go out and drive that airport route and I have to take an inventory of what is currently there. How many signs are currently there? If they're not in good locations, like we have one on the bottom of a stop sign, that's illegal. Can't do that. So it's just like the placement of how far apart they want to be. You have to think about oncoming traffic because you don't want to round a corner and you see a transit bus sitting there, you know, with its hazards on.
Yeah.
So like, because there's no cutouts for buses to pull into. So people are having to go around us all the time. The driver doesn't look, you know, somebody goes around the bus, there's an accident right there. I just had that a couple weeks ago. So, yeah.
There's more to that.
All there is, it's a lot, it's been going on I've been in this position over 2 years and I started it right when I first came into this position. From the whole inventory and updating with Google Maps and pinging all the stops and where do we want the stops. It's a lot of work.
Which gets me to, I'll be probably talking to you, James, about what you're doing with that study. And maybe getting some information from you as you talk to communities, you know, and see how we can, if something kind of works together here, you know, what we can put in the report, what we're finding and such, so.
We're creating some nice reports as we go, so we have a report on master plan findings and writing up a report for them and share that.
Okay, that'd be great. Easter seals? Do you have anything? You are unique with what you have, so.
Yeah, you know, as far as like things that pertain to us, not really anything. Well, one of the biggest things naturally that we deal with is just with our school buses, trying to fly by. We're curb to curb for our school busing, so we have to stop anywhere type of a thing, wherever we need to pick up a student. So that's very dangerous. I know that like the state just started this kind of new procedure where you can report those. And so we are like getting involved with that to hopefully, you know, make things safer as much as we can. Also, I'm new to this area, so I don't know the roads. Things are very different up here. I'm from Massachusetts, so and sometimes I'm just like perplexed by the roads in New Hampshire, why they're designed or like things. I've seen like lanes disappear without warning, or they expand.
Well, that's the pot calm killed.
Not that that doesn't happen, and actually New Hampshire has much nicer roads than Massachusetts, by far, so. My suspension is happier up here. So, as far as, you know, things like that, but I also wonder, and again, this is like my ignorance and being new to the area, but I've never, and also learning too about like the safe streets and what those look like, as far as like bike lanes. I don't have like there's not really a ton around where I live at all. I noticed like the bike lane, like on Elm Street, it's like the bike lane and then there's like a turning. Is that like, kind of the best practice? Like, I don't really, cause I find that almost kind of scary, cause people like could just like fly into that lane, like crossing over the bike lane to get into that lane. I don't know if that's just the way it's supposed to be, or.
She hasn't been here long enough to get stopped by enough cops to learn to drive correctly.
Yeah.
I mean, I came from Massachusetts too, and there's a whole, well, for a long time, New Hampshire has had a different mindset. People used to be polite. When people are here from away, I can say it because I'm from away too, people from away are not polite. New Hampshire, but for the most part, you won't find people acting like Massachusetts drivers at those intersections where you see the bike lanes. People, for the most part, say, I'm not supposed to go that way. But there is a whole new culture of people from other places that just are out to get wherever they're going. Not a lot of them yet, but more than there used to be, but for the most part, they stay with us. It's fine.
But I think you bring up a good point with being unfamiliar with the roads.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
New Hampshire has a lot of people vacationing and come up, so they're unfamiliar. Most of them stay on the interstates, but sometimes they're gonna have to get off and they wanna go to a restaurant. So those people that are unfamiliar, are the roads safe enough for them and the information there and like crosswalks, lighting to give them and the residents that feel of calm and I can be out on the road and not have to worry. I mean, I think, you know, I'm from Mass originally, but I've been up here for a while, but it is different. But when you get outside of, like, you can drive Manchester, it's well lit, Nashua, the bigger cities, but when you go off and I've driven Hudson, some of the roads don't have lights. So you, like,
Yeah.
you don't know where you're going. So those things, how do we make sure the roads are safe? Because those are the ones that you can go off the road pretty quickly and usually they're one person, if they're speeding, you know, we just had it, there was a rollover and such. So we have a seatbelt law. Not everybody uses them. Motorcycles, we don't have the helmet law, which doesn't help us with our statistics. You know, we're up to 77 fatalities already. We're gonna be probably 15% higher than last year. It works against us, but how can we can't design everything, but we can try to improve it to make it easier in the safer roads, but
Yeah.
people use it, so your curb to curb, I think, is an important one where you have places where you have to pull off. Is there sufficient space? Sounds like sometimes there's not.
Right.
And such, so there's some safety there, but where it's curb to curb and they're not crossing the roadway to get to the bus, like a school bus.
Right.
That's fine. Okay. All right.
But yeah, my question too was, like about the bike lane is, I mean, what's the answer?
Greg here, that sounds right, but
Actually, Elm Street, I think, was laid out very by the book. Kristen's actually on.
Are you talking about how through bike lane?
Yeah,
and
like
then the
through
right
two
turn?
lanes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it would,
The bike lane's always to the left of a right turn lane because you don't want like someone turning right and like right on red, like they're not necessarily looking to see someone like along the curb. So the bike lane always shifts inside the right turn lane.
Right, so it's just kind of expected to like.
there's always going to be a
like check
point of
up
conflict
lines.
at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah, no, I know,
You can't avoid that, so you wanted to have it happen before the turn, so that way they're not looking for oncoming traffic and bikes, and
Gotcha.
it's much more dangerous to have them hit them at a right angle versus miss them on that. It's the best of
It is the
a tough
best.
situation,
Like,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, I think Manchester's pretty well represented in this meeting, so I'll defer to my colleagues on that, but just a general question regarding diversion of resources and where you allocate resources. So I guess my question is, how does the calculus work in terms of how many minor injuries do you get to in one area before you get to like a fatality or to a critical injury? And also, if you look on the chart, I mean, if you go by the numbers, Manchester's very well represented by accidents because there's more people, there's more movement, more interworking parts. So how many accidents in Derry equates to one accident in Manchester? I know it's a tough question. I don't have an answer for that. I'm curious.
You can see the challenge where we're dealing with the 4 MPOs and 72 communities overall. How to, and nothing against Manchester, but how do you take the big cities of Nashua, Manchester, Rochester, and make them the focus point? So what we're looking at for the plan is to do it in context. So instead of following the crashes, more as in, okay, we're dealing with neighborhoods and maybe rural roads, and then maybe city related. Like, we're trying to break it up so that we need to make sure the plan covers everything. And you know, your question about like how many accidents equals another. Fatalities usually, you know, they catch the eye of everybody. We can't do it on this plan, but we've done it for others where we really look not only at the accidents, but the near misses, because you may, if you're looking at one community, you may have a couple intersections that have crashes, but there's another intersection that if you did a video out there, there's probably 20 that could have happened, just didn't. But that's just as dangerous as the ones that do have the accidents. So it's you want to be proactive. So when we're looking at what we call the countermeasures and we have a toolbox, the idea is if you feel that you haven't, and I go to sidewalks and crosswalks just because they're easy to understand, but if you have a crosswalk that you feel is unsafe and you add lighting, well, you know what, we can do that there because we have an issue, but I have 5 other locations that can use the same countermeasure that we're going to improve it before something happens. You want to catch it before if you can. And if you think about pedestrians and bicyclists, you know, the chart that if you're going 20 miles an hour, you know, your fatalities and serious injuries are so high, and for every 10 miles an hour you go higher, you know, those minor injuries, speeding goes up, circumstances change, that could be a fatality. Like we do weight them on some safety. We're doing a study on another part of the project, in another part of the state, that fatalities and serious injuries are weighted higher. But we won't do that here right now. We're gonna see where the numbers come, but we're not gonna prioritize by the accident locations. It's gonna give us an idea of why is there so many accidents there and what can we help? Maybe that's Manchester. Maybe Ware has an intersection that has 5 accidents and nothing else in the state. All right, what is there something that stands out there? You know, where is this? Oh, it's a crosswalk, or it's 5 businesses all coming out at the same time, and there's confusion and people, you know, cause problems. We can't do a deep dive based on just on a committee, but we try to figure out some of the stuff. That's the biggest challenge for us is how to reach things, and it's going to be a higher level just because of the amount of diversity. Looking at community diversity and road user diversity. I want to make sure that we cover everyone. And that, I think, is where this plan is helpful. It gets the start, but the next stage where communities can take the plan if they want to do a deeper dive, or 2 communities. I mean, that's the other thing is when you go for these other grants, you can have 2 communities team up if they think they need to, but it's to build on that. And it's not an end all manual. It's intended to be kind of like a living document where, all right, we did this. Now what's next year, you know, crash data, because you're going to be doing Manchester and other communities are going to be doing improvements out there. you may have a safety concern here. Well, you did it. Now let's look at the crashes improved, hopefully, and go from there. So ideally, this is just the start. And with the safe system approach, it's providing that framework so that we can keep going. Yeah.
Just to answer that a little bit more, just in my analysis, don't find a strict linear relationship between population and crashes. It doesn't work like that. For example, in Manchester's about the same size as Nashua. It's about 15,000 people smaller than Nashua is. But Manchester's fatality and serious injury rate for bicyclists and pedestrians is twice as high per capita as Nashua. So there's something going on there more than just adding people. Is it, if it's based off of more people walking? It's that we can see that it is, why that is, there's debate.
And the other thing that we've developed, I haven't shown the slide because we haven't kind of checked on it, is if you take the MPO region, what we did is a high injury network, and we took the top 50 roadways within the MPO. So that means these are the 5 roadways that have these 50 out of all the roads. If you combine them, 80% of the accidents occur on these roads. So we kind of look at that to see if there's something going on. That's where the high injury network comes in. So some of that analysis is still being worked out. So we're going to see, okay, this stretch of road, there's an outliner in where, that for the amount of traffic or amount of crashes with the traffic, why is that so high? And see what stands out there. But like I said, we're going to see what we can come up with. It's going to be context driven. That be our next steering committee is really kind of walk through. But yeah.
So Frank, just by way of illustration.
Yeah.
If, for instance, I'll go back to mid-block bike ped crossings. If mid-block bike ped crossings were an issue that we identified in the action plan, we said mid-block bike ped crossings are an issue in our region, and here are potential countermeasures that we would do that. Then having that justification in the plan would then allow, Manchester, for instance, to say, to apply for implementation funding and say, we've got 6 of these locations that we want to address with X, Y, and Z countermeasures as identified in the action plan. And that would set Manchester up in that scenario to apply for construction funding, as an implementation funding to do that through the SS4A program. Is that
Yeah. And it also adds, even if it's not through, there's other grant mechanisms. So you're not tied to just this SS4A. I mean, they may have other projects that they might be able to tie it to, or, they're doing a water line burst and hey, now's the time to go back out on this roadway and maybe we can do some safety improvements that we can go back to the plan and look and go, yeah, we can incorporate some of this. There's some other avenues there.
But it's like a systemic approach to implementation. In other words, we're not chasing problem intersections around. We're saying, okay, we've got a problem on this type of infrastructure, mid-block trail crossings, and here's what we're gonna do. And we've got a problem on this type of infrastructure. We've got a problem on this type of infrastructure. And then, it's presented systematically, a systematic improvement that municipalities can then apply to make those improvements on the ground.
Because there's nothing worse than for us to do a report and then have the communities come back and go, this doesn't work for me. Like, how are you gonna use this report? How are you gonna use this information? It may not be something right away, but it may be in a year because just your situation in your community. So I don't want to keep anybody off. I'm gonna ask Mark to talk. Mark Sunan. You have anything for me?
I put a whole bunch of stuff in the chat so as not to drone on and on.
Drone on a little.
Yeah.
All right, I could give you some of the highlights. So talked about community risks, in the town of New Boston. One of the big ones that we haven't really talked about a lot is pedestrian bicycle interactions, particularly when you have groups of bicyclists. One thing we find is we've got roads like Route 13 that wind through along the river. You've got groups of bicyclists in front of you. that are slower than traffic wants to go, finding a safe place to get around them when you have riders riding abreast rather than in single file. And then we talked about speeding earlier, intersection sight distance, just in a rural community, sight distance with stone walls and ledges tend to be a problem at some intersections. And then I threw in a whole slew of potential safety strategies if you wanted to go in that direction now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, overview, a couple.
Okay, more frequent renewal of pavement markings, adjusting the widths of lanes, using pavement markings to calm traffic, narrower lanes, perception of narrower lanes. When Nate mentioned driver education, I think that could be a legitimate strategy, is encouraging or requiring educational requirements for driver license renewals. Not just at get your license and never get educated again. More application of speed feedback signs, particularly rapid deployable units. And then one that I'm particularly hot on, focus on safe implementation of work zones and flagging, particularly for utility company work plans and paving operations.
Oh, it's a good one.
I like that one. I like it.
Is work zones an issue?
Depends.
Yes, 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 and yes.
I'm asking them now.
Some companies are really good, or some from some companies are very good, and then you got these other guys that are like, you wonder how long have they let out of bed?
Yes.
Because the corners are bad.
And it doesn't,
I almost took one out the other day because the sign they had was like 3 miles back. So by the time, you're coming home with the end of the year zoning out. They didn't move forward as they moved with their work. And by the time I came to them around the corner, I forgot about the signs. So the crews aren't.
And I guess communities, are you allowed to use officers and or flaggers, or are some communities specifically officers and like?
I hardly ever see officers.
I see officers.
I think Manchester's kind of, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
So we've seen both of them.
Is there a requirement when you use one or the other?
No, I think not to get into the weeds so much, but I think from what I've been told, that they contact the local police department if they have no, I mean, I've seen state police and I've seen sheriffs in Derry from the county. But then you see that, like Linda said, it's inconsistent, they're good and bad, and you see private companies with their flaggers. So.
And I know that police departments are still looking for people. They don't have enough officers.
Staff, yeah.
That they're really pushing for flaggers more, which.
There's Manchester's construction everywhere.
Yeah.
All over the place.
Okay.
And you almost can't expect to have an officer at every single.
Yeah.
I think one
much.
solution would be if they had anyone working on a street as a safety person, like,
A training certificate. Or something.
absolutely like day glow orange gloves, because I'll see officers with black gloves or no gloves and you can't see their hands, you cannot see their movement. But you have just some person with a nice yellow glove or an orange day glow, and now
That's genius right there.
You should, like, I want to
go with that.
You can get, half the time you get.
Never even thought of that.
The pounds are always back.
well, I just think
Other ones that just stare at you.
standard work
doing?
gloves. Everybody working in a street has to have
That's,
a neon glove, and then we'll all calm down.
Getting in on live territory there.
Yes,
that's a great idea.
Next
fine.
thing we'll do singing and dancing. But the other thing that
Wow.
they're supposed to take training for flaggers. They're supposed to.
It seemed like it used to be better than it is. I can't tell them it used
Well-
to be better than it is now, or if they're just doing more work now because of the trees and the storms and stuff.
Yeah, I've noticed a couple on their phones while you drive by.
Yes,
And I don't know if they're
yes.
trying to coordinate with somebody ahead or not, but I mean, that's not working. But I mean, I think Mark
Seen
did
that.
it. I know work zones on major highways has been an issue with, I think there was somebody recently got hit, a worker. Unfortunately.
95.
Yeah. So, I mean, we know that from a national trend. The feedback signs, the lane widths, pavement markings.
Oh, yes, so the line marking, so, you know, people retire and new guys come on. Francistown did have a real problem speeding through that bad intersection. And it was the first time we were doing something about streets, the original pilot program.
Right.
And Sylvia helped us with that. And, we got the DPW to agree to make the line width the same width as it comes through downtown, which is much narrower when it went around the corner. That made a huge difference. Unfortunately, that guy retired from being the head of striping in the whole New Hampshire. He's gone. And the new guy is still,
They don't know that.
he's working on it. He's working on improvement. So we right away, we went back to the old. But it's like, you could still see the new line, but he just didn't believe it and went to the old line, which.
What's ever in their program.
Which he went to it was in the records to do it over here, and now there wasn't around here.
Do you, for Francistown, do you know if they apply lines every year? Once a year?
I believe so. I believe they're at least every year on because it's 136, that's the one that's the bad, it's like a totally blind one.
Yeah.
Always around. They do the white ones every year.
Do they do crosswalks as
We
well?
don't have any,
Maybe.
like I said.
Years ago, there was a crosswalk.
We used to have a crosswalk, and we went to repave it, repaint it, and we got told, no, that would be not wise from a legal standpoint. Because we'd be sued because it didn't meet whatever the specifications are
The
for.
visual
Yeah,
criteria.
Like in general for the town, like Manchester, or Krista may know, like how often do you guys restripe? Is it twice a year? Yeah. Kristen, do you know?
Once.
Once.
We do it once a year.
And it's in
For crosswalks
springtime?
and long lines and stop bars.
Yeah.
Slightly less, sorry, in the car. We start in like April and go through September.
Okay.
And we do everything regulatory first, so it's like double yellow, long lines and stop bars and crosswalks. And then arrows come in at the end if we have time.
Okay.
But we don't get to those every year.
Okay. If there's a problem arise and they say, hey, a crosswalk is fading out, do you guys have like emergency?
Yeah, we have our painting equipment out every day, so we can jump. We try to not jump around so that we can get more done.
Yeah.
And any new paving, we require crosswalks and stop bars to be in thermos, so it'll last a little longer. But yeah, we can adapt and get to something if it's an issue.
Yeah, I'm not picking on you. I'm just trying to understand. So like if we write something up.
Is the paint crappier than it used to be? It doesn't seem to this.
Oh, no.
Some of the contractors tend to have a little bit of watered down paint, so it wears a little faster, which is why we like to do it in-house when we can.
Perhaps a system to get more towns, more of these mobile radar signs that can be moved around, because that's a traffic calming measure. We found that in our town. We used a grant a number of years ago, and that thing is moved around town. So it's almost like adding another police car to the force that's out patrolling for speeders. And maybe, some kind of a grant or bulk purchases that are administered by MPOs to get them to smaller towns that have more rural road stretches that, small town can have a police force large enough to do that. I mean, and also the fixed signs, Darien, another example, on 102 between the center and the traffic circle. That one definitely has calmed the traffic on that stretch. So that's not as expensive as a trailer, but it's mobile.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, those mobile signs, having them move around, those feedback signs too.
Yes.
I know those work pretty well, kind of keep them going. That's great.
I've always understood that to be New Hampshire DOT's preference. The mobile signs, I always, and maybe it's different now, maybe there's other research, but I had been under the understanding at one point that There was research that showed the fixed signs kind of blend into the background and lose their effectiveness after a certain period of time. And the mobile signs, because they're always in a new location, getting moved around, tend to be more effective for a longer period of time because it's new and different. And when something's new and different in a location, it gets people's attention while it's there. But if it was fixed, it kind of fades into the background and becomes less effective over time. I don't know if the research still shows that, but I know that was DOT's position.
I agree with you, but the other factor is that it's not flashing when you come up to it. It's a triggered response.
It's off until you hit it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
If we can go back to trails, I'm gonna ask Tammy to add her 2 cents in, but I know Tammy in our office is a big bicycle commuter, and because the rail trail is a multi-user system, I would suggest lighting. Tammy has to go through at least 1 tunnel. I don't know if there's 2, Tammy, but and that wasn't lit recently, and some of the, I think it's homeless population down there, put in cinder blocks in the middle of or something to block the path, and Tammy went flying off her bike. And so just having lighting in various locations, especially where, you're going through a tunnel or even at night on these multi-use paths. Because we do know that, and we've talked to DOT about homeless encampments. We know that some folks are camping along the rail trails, and so just keeping it safe and through lighting, I think would really be helpful. But Tammy, I know you probably have a long list to provide these gentlemen.
I probably do, and I don't want to take up the entire meeting. Just on the cinder block and tree stump situation, I think that kind of highlights the desire for seating. People are always putting lawn furniture underneath the tunnels and bridges. They're pulling giant rocks from the side of the trail. They're pulling tree stumps from the side of the trail just to have some place to sit. So that might be another consideration as well.
Well, that's a good one. Yeah, I mean, if there was just some permanent seating along the edges of the trail, that way people might keep out of the middle of the trail.
Right.
And you must have some other thoughts, Tammy.
Not off the top of my head, being put on the spot. I do really, really like the new wayfinding that's been installed along the South Manchester Rail Trail. I think that's really great, showing the street names so you know where you can get off and access other parts of the neighborhoods. I love that it shows that you can get to the airport. I think that's really great, and I would love to see that continue.
You can thank Mark for that.
Thank you, Mark.
No, that's good. If you do have something that you think of after, don't be hesitant to email, definitely.
Okay.
Regarding wayfinding too, if we put on our dementia-friendly hats, wayfinding signs are critical. So for those who have issues with memory, wayfinding signs can really help you, whether it's getting you to a safe place like a town hall or a police station, sort of a library, just sort of where local amenities are that can help someone who has dementia and is not sure where they are.
Right.
I'd like to just note something about facility design as you put together strategies. The US DOT Federal Highway has some really great resources for designing facilities for vulnerable road users.
Yeah.
But as you move away from sort of areas that are connecting centers of activity into those centers of activity, there are additional resources such as the National Association of City Transportation Officials has some really good guidance for designing facilities. And the key there is that when you move away from sort of a suburban road environment into a street environment where there's lots of access,
the rules kind of change and some of the things that seem counterintuitive to safety become the better solution. And so I would just say that whatever you put together for a strategy, there should be a clear definition of whether that strategy applies in a connecting condition or a downtown / activity center condition, because they really do require different solutions.
I know,
A plan for, and there may be, because I think, didn't they remove like tolls on some portion of 93? Like, is the goal for like all toll booths to be like removed?
So Merrimack removed the tolls on their ramps. And I believe Bedford is gonna go to the overpass
Bedford will be AET.
next year.
And it will be starting soon.
Yeah,
So Bedford will be AET, I think Route 16, so I think Spalding's already AET, isn't it? So Spalding Turnpike's already AET, I think 95 is eventually gonna move to AET. And I think Hooksit's gonna stay as it is until that reaches the end of its useful life and is tolling. That, I think that's the current. But yes, Bedford will be all electronic.
Just because I know like
Soon.
recently there's been like water crashes.
Yes. Yeah, the AET will help both congestion and safety in Bedford substantially.
That's great.
Yeah.
so our work, we're not gonna really get into the state,
Yeah,
you know, because whatever we come up with, it's really DOT that's gonna control it. So like your 95s, your 93 Spalding Turnpike, we're not gonna have, that's really not gonna be part of this, because we wanna make sure it's off those major routes that we all have control over. The state, we can tell the state to do something, but it's up to them.
right.
So that's unfortunate, but yeah. If we add all the crashes on the highways, it would have just overloaded everything, so. Who haven't I had the chance to hear from?
we haven't heard from Lucia from Bedford.
She was having audio problems earlier.
And Grant is brand new to Hooksett. I'm gonna think that Grant might just be a sponge at the moment.
Okay,
But Grant, I don't wanna put words in your mouth. Are you still there? Sponge.
Yep, I'm still here. That's basically accurate. I guess the only things that I've picked up on so far in terms of roadway safety are our town engineer is going to be applying to New Hampshire DOT's 10-year program for site distance improvement at the corner of Hackett Hill Road and Route 3A, and widening between Legends Drive and Hunt Street on Route 3. We have a lot of congestion in Hooksett, and the other one's just a site visibility improvement.
so Grant, you don't have to come off mute, but if you want, where you're new, if you want to look at that first question and talk internally, you can provide me like comments or bullet points if there's things that pop up that you've heard from others within Hooksett that are safety concerns. I just want to make sure we're hearing from everyone. So if you can do that, that's great. That'll help us. I know you're new, so I'm not gonna put you on the spot, so. Just.
Okay, yep, I can do that and I can follow up.
Yeah, that would be great. No pressure. I just want to make sure everybody gets heard and has an opportunity to provide information. So thank you. And the same with Lucia. So.
Kristen, I know we're close to our bewitching hour. Any thoughts you'd like to share from the city's perspective that we may not have already heard?
I think Sam has a list of some of the like specific ideas and generalized ideas that we came up with, but more general was, like how to better serve vulnerable road users, like with bump outs or little like safety countermeasures that we can take into account when we do like paving projects. And also like a wider implementation of APS push buttons, because we don't have a lot of those in Manchester, and it's very important for that community as well.
Yeah, we have a list of project ideas we've had kind of in the back of our minds, and they kind of boil down to, you know, our infrastructure's old, like everything in New England. A lot of the intersections specifically should be relooked at again. Site distance issues, speeding issues. And there's a lot of new solutions out there that we'd like to consider, the biggest being roundabouts, obviously. I mean, we have that raised project, Queen City Ave, South Willow. A really massive intersection, a lot of legs going in, and we came up with the solution with the double roundabout. Yeah, that was probably the worst of it, but we have other intersections like that throughout the city where there could probably be similar, not double roundabout, but similar type solutions. And yeah, some guidance there on designs, possible solutions, and then like she said, just signal upgrades in general, APS push buttons. And then curb bump outs, things like a complete streets type approach for overall corridor improvements. We put in some bike lanes on some key north-south routes, but there's more that could be done, like bump outs, and some more, maybe some guidance on road diets and finding width within the curb to curb to provide additional protection. Because I mean, I'm out there driving, one of my biggest concerns when I'm driving around the city and I see is the striping can only do so much, doesn't guarantee compliance. I see cars driving right over those bike lanes. So solutions where we could provide additional protection for bikers to make it a true bike corridor. And I guess that kind of covers that. And then the other thing was our rail trails.
Yeah.
The midwalk crossings like we talked about a few times.
Just, that's it, huh? Just those? Yeah, no, that's fine. This is all good. I mean, that's, yeah, those are all good ones.
Yeah. Kind of on a non-Manchester related quote, 'cause I live in Derry and.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, so and then to piggyback on what was discussed earlier about lane widths, if there could be some kind of type of guidance on just a maximum lane width. Not every road needs to be striped like a highway. I feel like a lot of municipalities in the state default to 12 feet. Doesn't need to be 12 feet everywhere. And I think if there's more guidance on when 12 feet needs to be used versus when you can go down to 11 or even 10, that can provide a lot of safety for other types of users. Because then, and then I'm specifically thinking of Island Pond Road, because that's around where I live. They just recently restriped that. I think we're up to like 15 feet right now. Because every time it gets restriped, it's not always 12, and there's no more shoulder.
Yeah.
So certain kind of guidance on lane widths in general, a focus there. I think a lot of New Hampshire is kind of behind in the sense that it's just, all we think about is the car. And a more overall all users approach would get you thinking about using that width for other users, which would in turn reduce the lanes, reduce the speed, and improve the road.
That's a big
Cause a bus to
discussion.
pull over,
Right.
So we,
not having to go around it.
there is talk, you know, there are cities that go down to 10, but they always get pushed back from emergency responders.
Right.
That's always the trick, but yeah, we can kind of see, but in here, I'm not sure if we'll get into that, but we see how we can cover that, but I wanted to make sure I got you first, sorry.
Yeah, so Brendan with the City of Manchester Planning. So I don't have a lot of stake in the roadways or even sidewalks, but we are right in the middle of a lengthy community meeting process. And so I do have a couple points that we've heard from residents. I think DPW's already kind of covered most of these, but just to kind of reiterate, we're hearing a lot of talk from folks that are looking for, you know, lighted sidewalks that are flashing because they are seeing a lot of speeding in those areas. So they're, and you know, additionally to that, they're looking at like, they'd like to reduce speeding on some, you know, roads, traffic calming measures. There's been a lot of input about walkability and pedestrian safety as well. And we've also heard a little bit about kind of increasing transit frequency and stuff too. So those are kind of some of the key takeaways that we're hearing from residents that, yeah, I just wanted to share briefly. And oh, and by the way, anybody's welcome to come to these meetings if you're interested in coming to a community meeting in Manchester. They're all actually a lot of fun. So
What was after speeding? Sorry,
Oh.
traffic,
Traffic calming measures, yeah.
So one thing, and then I'll be done, I promise. One thing that we're looking at from a state level, we're gonna do an analysis. Delaware and North Carolina did this. They had issues with two-way stops. So if you think of a four-way stop, two of your minor roads are stop conditioned and the rest is through. And they found that intersections, people are trying to find gaps to get out and it's causing issues. Delaware and North Carolina did a study of converting those to four-way stops. Working on a different safety project with DOT about analyzing certain intersections in the state to do that. Some of the communities throughout the state have asked for certain locations, so that's another safety measure or countermeasure that might be looked at, and that's rural, city, everywhere, wherever. So that you may see that countermeasure maybe in here. We're gonna see how that analysis goes, but that might be another thing to consider. That, I think I'm done.
Yeah,
Somebody-
Andrew had his hand up, maybe one final comment and then we'll wrap.
Okay, so Chester basically is bisected in the center by two state maintained roads. And then there's a fifth one that branches off within a few hundred yards of that main intersection. And almost all of the mileage from that intersection to the town borders, the state roads have, the fog line is 10 inches from the edge of pavement. And depending on the maintenance schedule, sometimes that can drop off 4 to 8 inches, depending on a rainstorm. So there's no space for any bicyclists or pedestrians. There's no safe zone at all. And we do have one stretch of 102 that for about 3 miles has a full breakdown lane on either side, but that's the rarity. And if some thought could be given to widening some of these roads, putting a slightly wider gravel shoulder and then putting enough space for a bike lane, that would help a lot. But we just finished getting the results of a fantastic survey that Tammy and Suzanne put out. We're updating our master plan, and they really did an outstanding job. We had a 40% increase per capita increase in responses over our update 8 years ago. And we got a lot of comments that I'll pass on to you about traffic, but that's one of the reasons that people don't feel safe about walking or bicycling along the main roads is the shoulders are so narrow and so rough and they drop off that people walk on the fog line, literally, along to those big thoroughfares through our town. And then they just hop off when they see traffic coming, and for cyclists, I myself used to cycle a lot when I was younger. I've had 2 bad bike rides, and I gave up riding a bike when I moved back to Chester, because there's just no place to ride safely. It's just not, but it's beyond the town's ability to provide complete streets on those state roads. It's gotta be at some point when they think they're gonna redo a section of state road, they've gotta widen it by 4 or 5 feet.
No, it's a good point. Thank you.
We are at we're past time, so out of respect for everyone's time, I think we do need to wrap up. What a great discussion, though. I think a lot of great ideas and suggestions. I'm sure Frank and Greg have full QuickBooks after this discussion, but really helpful. This is not the only opportunity, so please, we'll make sure that everybody's aware of the workshops that when they get scheduled. But if you have other thoughts, if you walk out of here and 2 hours later, you say, oh, I really wish I would have mentioned this, shoot us an email. We'll make sure that Frank and Greg get that information. So always feel free to follow up with us, through email after the meeting if you have other ideas. And we'll make sure that those get to our colleagues at BOP. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Thank you, everybody. Any other business or anything? No? Good to go? Motion, all right. Second,
Sorry.
all right.
I always try to.
All right, adjourned.
Oh,
Thanks,
one thing before we I would like to acknowledge, George, this is your last.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was walking up.
I don't know how many years you've.
40.
On the TAC, but
Oh, yeah, the TAC.
probably close to 40 years on the TAC, if not a full 40 years on the TAC. George is retiring at the end of this month. We had a very nice celebration of his career at our last MPO meeting. But George, thank you for everything. Thank you for all of the times that you have volunteered to serve on subcommittees and help us prioritize projects and review and RFPs and the countless ways you served our commission and this TAC and our MPO over the years. We appreciate everything. And we hope you enjoy your retirement as much as you possibly can and have all the fun you can in the coming months and years. So please don't be a stranger. Come back and visit us sometime. But thank you.
I won't say me, I was here, so I'll still see
Speak.
I'll see some of you at the annual dinner next month, but thank you, Nate. And
We'll see you the 27th
I
at
will see you on
MTA.
the 27th for MTA. And
Last
I
one?
want to thank everybody. Yes, I'll be my last one
Awesome.
for MTA too.
All
so
right,
thank
glad. Come on.
I'm gonna keep it brief. It's been a rough week, but I enjoy coming here. I like the commission meetings and, today was a great discussion, Frank, I think we need. But I enjoy it and I've had good relationships with many people over the years and the commission's been great to work with staff. So thank you. I am looking forward every time and I've been doing this for 40 years and try some good things. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So.